They really just don't want you to own anything. What's up, nerds? So a few years ago, I bought this thing for my car because my car really doesn't have any Bluetooth capabilities and stuff like that. So essentially what I had before was a Bluetooth to FM transmitter. But what's really nice is it's actually gave me the ability to like switch my songs and stuff while still having my maps up on my phone, which was a really nice setup for the longest time. When iOS 18 came out, it kind of doesn't work very well with that. So it hasn't been working recently anyway. But then on top of that, I got this email about a month ago saying that Spotify car thing will no longer be working and they're basically shutting off all the access to it. And I kind of shrugged it off since it just hasn't been working anyway. And I will admit, for a lot of people, it was kind of useless. I did see a lot of people saying it's useless, and a lot of people also used it for their desk setups, which is kind of funny. And to prove that it's useless, somebody literally broke into my car and didn't take it. So, I mean, they took a bottle of Tylenol before they took that. There seems to be kind of a big shift in how tech companies view their users, and I think this is very telling of how the industry is now. I mean, I know it's an exaggeration, but if you think about it from the company's perspective, they definitely want to sell you a product a lot more often than they want you to keep using their product for a long period of time. So the tech companies are out for whatever profit they can get. And they had an old model in the early 2000s where you would buy every update for the software, but you got to keep that version of the software, which was pretty nice. I mean, you probably wouldn't have to update for a long time until it stopped working with your system. And I know even now a lot of big companies still use their like Windows 7 editions of whatever software they're using. Even in the Apple testing lab, they still have a Windows 7 computer running a really old proprietary version of the software. Huge companies actually also follow this model, like Adobe. Even Microsoft had Word and Excel also follow this model where you would kind of buy it once and you could keep it for a while until you wanted the updated version. But now it seems like companies have really gone on to the subscription model. And I sort of blame Netflix for this because they kind of pioneered this sort of model, and it seems like every company saw that this is like the huge lucrative way to go. Because if you think about it, paying 12 bucks a month sounds like a lot less money than $144 a year for a software, and double that for 2 years, so it's gonna be almost $300. And that's just for $12, which a lot of companies charge a lot more than $12. I know even YouTube charges like $13.99 now for the YouTube Premium. It doesn't really seem like it's worth it for a lot of software, especially when there's free alternatives out there. Like another good example is Premiere Pro, which is what I use, and I basically get it for free through my school tuition. But if I was paying $50, I think it's $54 a month for Premiere Pro, that would not be worth it at all. And I could see why a lot of people turn to piracy. And it's actually crazy that piracy is up 12% because just how crazy prices are getting. I mean, streaming services have basically split their catalogs amongst like all of them. And what's good is I do see a regression of that. So a lot of these streaming services realize not very profitable, run your own servers, and Netflix kind of was the old go-to. So if like Disney had a backlog of content that they aren't making as much money on, they would just sell the rights to Netflix, and Netflix could have it. Sort of a win-win for everyone, because instead of renting DVDs or renting movies online, you could just watch them on Netflix, which is kind of the play. And I think that companies are starting to revert back to that old model, which is kind of a good sign to see, but they're still going with this monthly subscription model. And it really does seem like the higher prices get, the more people turn to piracy. Since piracy has basically become super easy, and a better example of this was in the early 2000s, things like Napster were actually the main way for people to pirate music and put it on their iPod. And people were not paying for music at all. And that's kind of how Spotify got its rise back then, which was, from the company's perspective, they're not making any money on music that they're releasing, and people are just pirating it. So they have to make a more affordable way. It's not like people don't necessarily want to pay for the music, but they're not going to pay an outrageous price. They'd rather go without the music if that's what they have to do. But if you could pirate it, I mean, obviously people are going to go for that. I mean, it's gotten so crazy that you could buy a product nowadays and the product doesn't even work without like purchasing a monthly subscription on top of whatever product it is. And this could be as crazy as cars. BMW actually was gonna charge people for heated seats that were already in the car that you bought. I mean, you own everything, you own all the hardware for it, but there's software blocking it. And Tesla does the same thing with the speed on their car. Although I could see that a little bit better than the BMW thing, because it's like, the Tesla speed thing, I mean, yeah, it's a car that you already bought. I mean, you don't necessarily need this and you're not gonna use it every day, but the heated seats are just something that like comes in the car as like a luxury feature that you paid for. And I'm just shocked that they wanted a crazy $12 a month to just have heated seats. Another crazy example of this, and I was personally affected by this, was the HP printers. So HP no longer allows you to use their HP printer ink to like work with their printer, so you need to go to the store and buy special ink. But I was signed up for this program, I think it was $1 a month. So what they would do is just send you an ink cartridge whenever you need it. And I believe 2 months ago they said, we're actually gonna charge you $7 a month to print 30 pages, which is an outrageous price considering I don't print 30 pages a month, except for some months I do. It's like some months I'll print nothing and then some I print like 30 pages a month. So it's just really not worth it to pay $7 a month. That's just crazy. So I'd rather just buy the ink and have it sit in my printer. So basically all this ink that I have from this bill I've been paying, the $1 a month, I mean, $1 a month is really not bad at all, but once they upped it, they like, we're gonna auto enroll me first of all, which is crazy. They're just gonna auto upcharge me. And then second of all, my printer doesn't work anymore. So I have to go out and buy more ink that, even though I have ink for the printer, just isn't gonna work. And at first I thought they were bricking the printer, and I heard that they have done that to some printers where they just no longer work anymore because you need to be in the program in order to just use them. So I believe they should get a lawsuit for this because it's basically false advertising. I mean, I bought this printer thinking like, hey, I could use it like a regular printer. And I kind of lucked out since my printer is not really affected by that. But some of the other printers, I'd be pretty mad if I had a printer and doesn't work anymore and now I have to pay HP all my money. So never buying an HP printer again. But back to the streaming example, I believe streaming basically was born out of this model. I mean, Netflix didn't even really see profits until early 2017 when they made $500 million in profit. I feel like a lot of companies skipped out on seeing that 10 years they didn't make profit until 2017, and they just see that $500 million price tag and they're like, oh, there's a lot of money here. We have a lot of back catalog, why not just run it? And they don't realize server costs, like all this stuff. So they're just gonna open their own company and then try to get people to pay for it. And I've heard it said a lot online, but yeah, we're basically in the same age as cable TV, which I mean was okay. I mean, at least we don't have to watch ads as much anymore, but it's still just crazy that we've reverted back to what we were at. It's kind of scummy how some of the tech companies, also like Uber, what they sort of did when they first started was they kept their prices pretty low. They sort of won all the competition because their prices were so low. And now that they're basically the only ones on the market, yeah, Uber and Lyft, Uber raised their prices and Lyft does the same because they're the only two out there. I mean, obviously there are some alternatives, but it's like, now that everybody knows about Uber and Lyft, like they could raise their prices all they want because that's what people are gonna go to because that's what they know. In my opinion, that's kind of scummy because they just like beat out all the competition and we're losing all this money just so they can gain profits. But joke's on them because their profit margin is pretty thin, I've heard, and so like I don't know how well that's working out for them. And all this to say is that large companies really don't want you to own anything because if you own something, you can basically keep it forever. But if they are able to just essentially lease out stuff to you, I mean, they're obviously gonna go that method because over time, they're gonna make a lot more money out of you and you're not really gonna own a lot of the products you use. I mean, renting things and leasing things makes sense depending on what you're trying to do, but if you're trying to watch content, it doesn't necessarily make sense if you have like some favorite movies and stuff. And I do miss the age of DVDs where you could just take out your DVD, pop it in, skip past the ads at the beginning, and then you're into your movie. But now you're essentially locked into paying a subscription for a movie that you want to watch, and I guess joke's on you if they take it off. I mean, they can't do anything. And this happened a few years ago with like The Office, and they took The Office off. One trick around that is if you have a VPN like NordVPN, and this is not a sponsor, but hey, Nord, if you're asking for sponsors, I'm down. If you have NordVPN, you can put your VPN into France and their content library is like way bigger. And I'm sure it works with any VPN, just I use Nord. All this to say is that the internet basically gives us as like consumers more power and like ability to kind of counteract whatever these big companies are doing. So a good example of this is how, like I said at the beginning, my car thing's broken. There's tons of GitHub tutorials now that are popping up with it's like how to get your car thing to work after like when they shut it down. So you can run Linux on this little thing, and you could make it a music player and undo some of that damage that Spotify is basically doing with it. I mean, what's really scummy is what Spotify did was they dropped the price down to $70 so they'd sell more units, and then 2 months later they said they're gonna cut it out, like no longer gonna work, which I think is such a scummy thing because they're just trying to make all the profits off of it just so they could brick it for everybody, which I don't even know. I mean, that's just like an evil thing to do. I don't know why they would do that because it doesn't really cost them so much money to run. It's whatever. At least now, people are coming out with ways to run Linux on it and get it to run as like a media device, which is a nice counteraction to it. And like, people are always gonna use piracy. I mean, piracy I don't really ever see ending. And I just think us as consumers on the internet have a lot more power than we did when the internet didn't exist and we're basically stuck to whatever the companies or like news organizations were saying. I mean, on YouTube, we could upload videos for free and exchange information for free. Wikipedia's out there, Internet Archive. These are just like great resources where essentially people are able to get all of this stuff for free. And now, I don't really know what this video is about, but I thought I should make it just because my car thing is gonna be broken soon. And if you enjoyed this kind of abstract talk about tech, be sure to like or subscribe. But if not, I some other videos if you're curious about like this PC I just built as a Mac user. Got that video here. I got the subscribe button right here. So yeah, if you're curious, be sure to click one of those. What are you waiting for? They're right here. Okay, guys, you don't want to click them. Later.